Hello gamers and inters, and welcome back to another video on Project K. Today we're going to be doing a quick guide about movement and understanding how it works. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the Volibear deck that is given to us as a trial deck, and I'm just going to explain a few of the mechanics within this deck, but it will also work for other cards that have been released here. So, when you play a unit, you're obviously going to have to pay its mana cost. So if we look over here, we can see we have 2 mana, which means I can play this Rearguard. When I play the Rearguard, it would enter the base, so this area on the board is referred to as the base, and it enters exhausted, which means it cannot move. When a unit is exhausted, you can't move it by itself. You might be able to use something to move it, like a spell or a skill that was on like a card like Yasuo, for example. Yasuo, if we look over here, has the text, move a friendly unit to or from your unit base with the cost of some runes. So we can move him like that, but when a unit enters, it is unfortunately just going to become exhausted. An example of Legion Rearguard, though, is he has Accelerate. So as he is played, you may pay 1 rune and recycle a rune, essentially, and use a rune to accelerate him. So at the moment, I can't do that because I've used these. I can recycle a rune, but I don't have a rune to spend to accelerate him. So unfortunately, these 2 runes are not going to be able to do anything here. But just say I did have an extra rune, and you can see here that the cost that I need is a Fury rune. So if I had 3 runes, just say I was starting off with 3, what I could have done is I could have paid 2 runes to put him from hand to here. He would come exhausted. I would then pay a Fury rune, and then at the same time I would recycle this. So I've paid it and then recycled, and then he is now able to move to one of the battlefields. So this is the movement, and this explains acceleration. When you move from your base to a battlefield, you will become exhausted again. So every action that you move your unit just normally will exhaust the card. So if we started second or last against our opponent, we would have 3 mana. We could, in theory, accelerate him, so he comes to the board ready to go. And then we move him over here. We would get the points for conquering, so we would be 1 point to the counter, and he would be able to go here. At this moment, he cannot move, and you're kind of like stuck here for this turn. Some cards, for example, we have in the Yasuo deck, we have the card Windswept Hillock, which refers to a unit having ganking. If a unit has ganking, whether it be on the card itself like Misfortune here, or on the landmark over here, it means that they can move between landmarks. So what I will do is I will take the Windswept Hillock and just replace it for this one for the time being. So what I could do is, while I'm exhausted, I cannot move because I've used my action. But just say I pass back to my opponent does nothing, it then comes back to me. I would ready up, I would draw 2 runes. At the start of my turn, I would draw a card, and my unit here would then ready up. Because my unit now has ganking, it's allowed to move over to another battlefield, in which case it would then become exhausted. If, for example, we want to then not do that, we could also give the option to just leave the battlefield and return back to base, but you would become exhausted. You can do that from any battlefield. So if I was on this one, I could come back here, and then I would be exhausted. So if we go back to the example over here of not having the Hillock, if I wanted to put my Rearguard from this battlefield to this one, I'd have to use 1 turn to bring it over here. It would be exhausted. I would then pass back to my opponent. It would be my turn. And then the Rearguard can come back over here, and he would be exhausted once he moves. And that is just like the basic movement of the game. You can go back and forth, but you can never go side to side until your unit has ganking. And that also explains Accelerate. We do get some interesting mechanics going on later in the game. So let's say that we have 8 mana. We start our turn, and I see that I have a Dreadbloom Predator, and my opponent, we will grab, let's just grab a card, right? Let's just say my opponent has a card here. He moved it there last turn, and I'm starting my turn. So I would start my turn, just say, I ready up, I would draw a card, and I go, okay, I want to play my Dreadbloom Predator. So I play this. It would cost 8 mana, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It also costs, underneath the 8, you can see 2 physical runes, meaning I have to recycle 2. So that means this card goes to the bottom of the rune deck, and another one can go. You can recycle runes that you have used. That is not an issue. So just because I've used the mana and it is exhausted, it does not mean that I am unable to recycle that card. And then you may play me to an occupied battlefield. So even though he enters from my hand, he can immediately dodge the base and go over here exhausted. And we enter the battlefield here. And this means that now I can start Showdown here. And because my 8 is bigger than his 2, we would kill this. So it would go over to his trash. And the Dreadbloom would then win this combat and I would get a point. And that is the example of the Dreadbloom Predator, explaining a different kind of movement. Let's see if we've got another kind of movement here. We have a MF, which is ganking, which we kind of briefly talked about, but she also has a different effect. So let's ready up all the cards. And let's just say we have... let's say we have only... let's give us some more cards, and then I'll explain what the plan is here. So, I would start my turn. Miss Fortune comes down. She costs 5 mana and a physical rune. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So she would enter the battlefield, and she would come in as exhausted. Hi guys, this is Editing Marshall coming in here. I've realised when I was looking back at this video that I made a mistake here. As you can see, the cost for MF here is 5 plus a physical rune. So I have charged myself 5 runes, but I should have recycled one of the ones that I've used. It won't impact anything that's going to happen for the rest of this turn, but just know that if you were in this position, you should also be recycling 1 physical rune, as it is also underneath Miss Fortune. I obviously just missed it here when I was playing, but just as you're aware, I should have recycled a physical rune before I start doing the next step, but it won't impact anything else. But just so you know, I can pay 1 physical rune, and then I can recycle a rune, because that's the cost of it. So I will do that. So it has to be the 1. So you can see where it says, as I'm played, you may pay 1, and then the physical rune icon. So this is a mana that I have available. These are manas that I do not have available. So I cannot use this. I cannot recycle this one. Well, I can, but I'd have to still pay this one. So as long as I pay the cost somewhere, that is fine. So I pay, and then because I've paid, I'm also going to recycle this one. So this can enter the deck, the rune deck. And now my Miss Fortune is online. Because of my Volibear, I can also trigger over here, but we will talk about that later. Essentially, I do get another rune, but we're just going to ignore that for now, because we're just talking about movement here. So Miss Fortune is here. And because she's ganking, and because she's accelerates, she can move onto her target. So I'm just going to move her over here, and well, before I do that, there's a bit of text here. The first time I move each turn, you may ready another card. So what I could potentially do is I could go 1, 2, play this here, because I paid my 2 mana. It is not ready. It cannot move because I've not accelerated it. But because I moved Miss Fortune, so the ordering has to be correct here. So I moved Miss Fortune, she would then gain a point because this isn't conquered. And the first time I move each turn, you may ready another card. So then this now becomes ready. This is no longer exhausted, and I could move this here, and I could get a point. So it would become exhausted because it moved, and I would get another point. MF, really good example of cards that like to move fast. And just like the same, if I wanted to next turn, as we talked about with Hillock, just say I want this Miss Fortune to move over here. So it would be my next turn. I would draw 2 runes. My cards here would become readied. And I could say to Miss Fortune, like, if my opponent had a card over here that I think he was going to try and take this, I could move Miss Fortune over here with ganking. And if, for example, I had... Just say I have the mana to play here. So let's just say I would like to play a Blazing Scorcher for 5, but I don't want to accelerate it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I could move my Miss Fortune. So Miss Fortune joins. She would become exhausted because she's moved. That's her action. But because she's moved, she's readied a card. So the Blazing Scorcher can then also come over. and I've gone from having a battlefield with 2 to having a battlefield with 2, 5, so we've got 12 here now. So in just one action, I'll say one action, like one move, we've managed to increase the power over here. So it's really difficult for the opponent to try and threaten this now. And then we would get points for holding with the turn passing and stuff like that. But this is how movement is currently done. One of the things that you are going to have to be wary of, though, is the text on here, especially when it says the 1. So the 1 is meaning that you need to pay 1, and then the rune symbol saying it costs that rune. So as long as you can pay that 1, you can then get rid of that same 1 there. Another thing that I want to quickly mention is that when you're going to a battlefield, you don't have to move just one unit. You can select multiple units to move to a battlefield at once. As long as they're all ready, they're not exhausted, you can move all of your units to a battlefield, and then you can use their might to attack a unit that might be here. So just say, for example, we have our Volibear, just say we were against a Volibear deck, and we know that he has 9 on his might, and we're like, okay, he's moved here. I need to fight it. So what I can do is I can bring all of my units here to deal the damage here. So looking at here, we have 18 damage to deal against his 9. So then he can trade down as best as he wants to, whether that's kill this unit, kill this one, or kill this one. For the people that know the damage and understand it, you'll understand how the might works. For those that don't, I'm not going to explain it too much here, but yeah, we can explain that. So you can, instead of just like moving just the one unit and going, okay, this won't win the trade, you can move all of your units from the base to the battlefield to take on the your opponent and the card that they have. But yeah, that's a little bit towards the movement, just to break it down a little bit easier for you guys. Hopefully this was a little bit more helpful. As I said, I'm going to be working on a little bit more mini guides to go through movement. I think the next one I'm going to do is going to be combat, because it is a little bit complex, especially when you start introducing spells. But we will do combat with no spells, and then we'll do combat with spells, and I think it'll be a lot more helpful for people to understand it that way. But yeah. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I think it's going to be very fun when people start learning the game, and then they can start deck building, and yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun when people learn all the mechanics. So thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.